Hello, my name is Jenny, and I have not posted a video here in 6 years. And today is the day that I decided I wanted to post another video. And I wanted to post one about my connection to the Course over the 15 years that I've studied it, and kind of the most important aspects for me personally. And I think that'll probably differ for everybody, but I like speaking from personal experience and sharing, hopefully a little bit vulnerably even, about my difficulties over the years, my ebbing and flowing to and from God in the Course, and and where I stand with it now at this point. I think the Course is, just to be clear, the Course is my home spiritual path. It has, I kind of appreciate that it's, for me, my spirituality has just been, I'm so grateful. It's been really clear for me which books are true for me. It's been just crystal clear, and I'll get a really clear internal yes. My last video, I talk about the books that have given me that clear yes, and the books that led up to accepting, not even accepting, just like being kind of like knowing, like, oh, I found the book that is going to be my main lens through which I process my internal spiritual world, and that brings me to the ultimate goal, which is connection, full connection with God. As I mentioned in my last video, I received Course in Miracles from my uncle when I was 19. After having read several other spiritual books that I think kind of laid the groundwork. Peace Pilgrim was the one prior to that really laid the groundwork and reorganized how I thought about God and spirituality for me, and explained God to me in a way that I could accept. I really had a strong aversion to the word and to Christianity, having been raised Catholic, and really didn't want any to be associated with it. And still to this day, I don't talk about Course in Miracles with my daily life friends for the most part. We live in a pretty secular world, or at least the circles that I run in tend to be very secular. I kind of run with the lefties in this very academic town that I live in, and it's not very hip or cool to talk about God, because it's so connected to Christianity, and for good reason. Christianity has really harmed a lot of folks emotionally, physically, over its history, and I think I want to really bring in like this radical upheaval about what I even mean when I say God and when I talk about spirituality, and I want it to be something that doesn't oppress, and that we aren't using the same patterns, forcing dogma down people's throat. And like the most important thing to me that I've learned on my spiritual path is like the only genuine way for people to come to spirituality is for them to come to spirituality on their own terms. When they're ready for it, they won't want it. I don't believe in proselytizing. I don't believe in manipulating people into a belief system. That's so the opposite of anything that makes sense to me. It's not genuine. It's not a sincere buy-in. It's I don't want anyone to buy anything. Literally, like, yeah. So yeah, just this sense of I think I started talking about that because just these words are really loaded: Holy Spirit, Jesus, and God. And so I really want to come to it with this kind of radical overhaul of like, I don't come to it wanting to force anything down anybody's throat, and with a lot of deep compassion and understanding for the ways that people have been harmed by Christianity and Christian language and dogma. And also, like, yeah, just like naming, like, yeah, just all the different parts that it might poke in people when we start talking about, yeah, God and Holy Spirit. So, Course in Miracles, yeah, being this really kind of strange, esoteric book that people can project a ton of stuff onto, again, for good reason. And yet, you know, I consider myself a very critically thinking person. You know, I was atheist and agnostic for a good chunk of my adolescence. I always had like a sense of connection to something greater, like even if that greater thing was just access to my own soul. Like I journaled a ton, I wrote a lot of poetry, just born very introspective, and kind of analyzing things. And but I don't think of myself as someone that believes things blindly. Like I really need personal experience and an internal confirmation that something is true. And strangely, you know, Course in Miracles came into my life when I was 19, and I read Gary Renard's book, Disappearance of the Universe, and it was green lights. It was strange, to be sure. It was, I had like moments where I was like, this is really, really strange, and yet I don't know how to describe it. It was just like a calmness also, like it just felt true for me. And the concepts therein have proven themselves to support me in my journey toward inner peace time and time and time again. I'm still extremely, it goes without saying, very much in the thick of all of it. It's a lifelong path for me, and you know, only 34 years old, but yet have studied this thing for 15 years. And so I guess I just kind of wanted to talk about how this path has lived in me and looked in a life of someone, you know, someone who lives a very normal life. Like sorry for the abrupt edit. Yeah, just how does one live A Course in Miracles while living a very, you know, normal life? You know, I'm not a Course in Miracles teacher. I work full-time at a local government agency. I am well-liked in my community. I have friends who have no interest in Course in Miracles. They'll see these books on my shelves and never ask me a thing about them. Or sometimes they do, and I'm like kind of gauging what level of description to give. And I think that's okay. I think that it's okay if we're private about it. It's something really private and personal to me, which is why this is only the second video I've made in 6 years. And then it's the most important one, maybe like the most important thing to my life. It's just a given that this is the way that I kind of interpret the world and the tool with which I process my life experiences. And of course I use many different modalities. The Course isn't possessive and doesn't get jealous when we use different processes. I think that's, the Course is just like, it's a tool and it's a framework. And within that framework, there's tons of room to live a very full and well-rounded spiritual life. So I go to therapy. There's different therapy modalities I really like too. Internal family systems and somatic experiencing are two I really like. I like yoga and I like exercise and I like eating well. And none of those things are mandatory to live a spiritual life. It's just the things that, I guess I want to like loosen this tightness that I sometimes sense in the Course community, or maybe that I felt within myself, that there's a room to breathe in this body of work. I think it confused me at first. Like I tried to make everything fit in this paradigm, or like thought things like other, like, I'm not really big into astrology, but like I could see there's a spiritual teacher I was reading, Margot Cricker, who talks about using things like astrology and trying to think what the other things she used were, and I was like, oh, like it expanded my mind. Like we can use these things in tandem and it doesn't contradict. And it's really about, I could hear someone saying like, of course it contradicts. Like the Course doesn't believe in the universe in general. And yet I don't think that it doesn't have to be either or. That's like the biggest ego thinking, is that we have to choose either or about a lot of things. And while ultimately I do believe the theory of the Course, the metaphysics of the Course that say that ultimately we are not here. Have never left our home in God. And yet, of course, our daily experience is that we are in this physical world and have to eat and have to breathe. And so as long as we don't make things special in the terms of the Course, meaning that we kind of put them before our surrender to God, I think we can use whatever brings us closer to understanding ourselves and understanding just understanding ourselves and becoming closer to Spirit, to God. So, over the years I have studied Course in Miracles, and for me that's looked like a lot of things. I did the workbook lessons probably shortly after I read Gary Renard's Disappearance of the Universe in, I want to say 2009, 2008 or 2009. And gosh, there's just a lot of things that happen simultaneously. So I kind of want to back up a little bit and say there's a lot of ways that I connect to God and connect to Spirit. And some of those things are, I'm having trouble, like, I feel like I need to separate the Course in Miracles things that I do and everything I do, but really it's just a holistic collection of things that I do, with the knowing that the basis for it is my home path, which is Course in Miracles. But I started with the workbook lessons, and that was a really good way for me to continue my journey of looking inward and applying the daily workbook lessons and the thoughts to things that I would experience in my daily life, daily triggers. I think that it's really easy for me to get to overthink things and to be over intellectualize things, and that's been something that I've really worked on is to drop into my body, and to, even though the course is it is a very intellectual and academic text, it was channeled through academics, people with PhDs and doctorates, and so it's kind of with that style. And so I got really, really in my head for a long time using the workbook lessons and even reading the text. And I've really reached much more of a balance of doing a lot of somatic exercises in my daily life, and kind of reaching God through more embodied, less intellectualized processes. So, and like, the thing I want to say is, like, I think that that's the true idea of the Course, is to not, it seems like a contradiction, but because, again, the Course doesn't think we are a body. And again, ultimately, I know that we are not bodies. And yet, and Margot Krickar, Course in Miracles teacher, Margot Krickar, she's Dutch, she has since passed in 2013, but talks about how, like, kind of our past is stored in our body. Margot really, really helped me to accept and allow a more expansive understanding of the Course and a more body-based understanding of the Course. Again, there's this kind of irony of, like, we're not bodies, and yet while we're in these bodies, kind of our pasts do live within our body. We, on this plane, we have nervous systems, and we have intense moments and, like, calm moments. And she talks a lot about how she used different kinds of therapies to access painful stored memories in her body. My memory is that she talked a lot about how it lives within our gut, like our past lives in our gut, and there's all these stored painful memories that we shove down, and we store secretly all these secret things and pains that we keep in our mind and body. So that might have been a bit of a detour, but all that to say, my connection with the workbook has evolved over the years. So when I do workbook lessons now, which I still, I did it once all the way through early on, and at some point I restarted them, and I'm doing that very slowly over the course of some years. So I think I'm like lesson 187 right now. And when I do them, I think the thing about intellectualizing things is that it's a way of trying to be, for me, it's like trying to be perfectionist and do things perfectly, and to understand things through logic and analysis. And I think that's one of the ego's ploys, kind of. It's a way to avoid, a way to avoid kindness to ourselves, and a way to avoid love within ourselves. And so when I do workbook lessons now, it's so much kinder than it has been in the past. And reminding myself that we don't have to do them perfectly. I think that's my biggest lesson from Spirit lately, is kindness towards self is like the biggest thing. Like, we can shame ourselves till the cows come home, and that only draws us further from truth and from God and love. And the biggest thing is to be gentle and forgiving to ourselves. So workbook lessons has been a way that I have nurtured my connection to, have nurtured my spiritual life, and applied it in my daily life. And you're doing it in your mind, and no one knows that you're doing these things. And I would say, connected to that, I would say like my deepest love around, like, my favorite way to connect to spirit is sitting in silence with God. I feel like I have worked with forgiveness, the Course in Miracles method. It's a very organic method, but method or framework of forgiveness. A lot. I forget the beginning of that sentence. I worked with Course in Miracles forgiveness over the years, and I have become more comfortable with it, and it's still evolving, but much more comfortable with it. And that's probably my favorite thing and way to connect to God, is to, I guess in real time it looks like, for instance, me sitting down. Could be in the grass with the sun on my face, could be in my bed, could be walking, where I have a conversation with God. And I think one of the most important aspects of it are to, like, yes, it's really important for me to process out loud for myself, out loud or in my head. I do like processing out loud. But to leave a lot of room to hear and to listen and receive guidance. And I think, again, that evolves over time, but I think the biggest thing that I'm hearing for myself lately is that I need to create more spaces to hear guidance, and to make spaces for that, and to just listen. One of my favorite teachers, Peace Pilgrim, says that we spend so much time talking to God or talking at God, telling him what we think that we should do, or contemplating decisions, and we don't leave a lot of room to listen to the answers, or make space to just listen. Peace Pilgrim talks a lot about walking receptive in nature. That's a big way that she received guidance and connected with spirit along her spiritual journey. And I think that's just timeless advice, classic advice, and way to connect to ourselves and to connect to guidance on our journey. And I think the biggest thing for me is using that time to look at the things that I'm withholding forgiveness from. It's really hard. Forgiveness is really, really hard, especially the things that I resist and I harbor a lot of. Something I've learned about myself on this path, I harbor a lot of anger that I didn't know about when I was younger. And I follow a family line of people that hold grudges. I didn't think that was true for me, but I think the longer that I am honest with myself on this spiritual journey I've been on, the more I realize how much I hold on to stuff. And that's probably true for most folks. And I think it's really, really something that's been really important to me is to be, and I've, read throughout the course, is to be really honest with Jesus, with the Holy Spirit, or your inner guide, whatever word you want to put there to connect to our inner guidance, is noticing the places within myself that I hold shame and am guarded, and just let Jesus look at it with me. That's been one of my biggest prayers, and I think I probably got that language from Ken Wapnick, is just invite the Holy Spirit to look at it with you, because the Holy Spirit will look at it with you through a lens of kindness and non-judgment. The only judgment that's there is judgment that I'm holding against myself. And it's really, really painful to look at. and see how much I'm in pain. And so I recommend, there's different teachers that'll describe forgiveness in different ways, including the Course itself. The Course might not, it even talks about this, like it might not be as specific as you want, but then it says, but you may not have done specifically what is asked. And it's a little clever, and still like I needed more to understand forgiveness more from different teachers. So Margot Krikar talks a lot about, she describes it in her appendix, or afterward. She has a very specific way of unpacking the process of forgiveness. She calls it a 3-step process. And Gary Renard kind of lays out what forgiveness looks like, and even has some suggested phrases to like go through those processes. And then Ken Wapnick has his own, and they're all getting us to the same thing, and they're all basically the same thing, but a little bit different. And so I guess my suggestion around that is, one is you could read, and maybe I will try to post that might be a good post, is like, here are the ways that these 3 teachers talk about implementing forgiveness within ourselves. And you'll see the overlap. And then I think the thing that I want to say is like, the more that we do it, the more that we'll have our own, we develop kind of our own method for it. So I guess I'll speak to my own, although I'm tempted to talk about Margot's, because it's right here. But for me, and maybe I should make this its own video too, just kind of giving an example of a forgiveness process for myself. But for me, the biggest thing that I notice is that I will feel it in my body. I am admittedly a very emotionally aware and perceptive person. And sadness is one that comes up a lot for me, but there's also, I'll notice anger or having an edge about something. And when I make space for it, I'll just kind of slow down, notice where I feel it in my body, kind of put a name to what the emotion is, like deep, deep, deep grief or agitation. And it's kind of peeling the layers. I kind of visualize it as I'm going deeper and down. And sometimes this is strange, but sometimes I burp when I release a layer of resistance or release a layer of ego. I think it's about like my body relaxing a little bit deeper. We all have different biofeedback. So yeah, I'll settle down, I'll look at where I'm holding it and look at what the feeling is. Anger, sadness, blame, judgment. Those are less feelings. I think the root of those are still anger. And you can find these feelings lists online. Nonviolent communication. Feelings are really, literacy about feelings are really big with nonviolent communication practitioners. And so there's lists of feelings which can be really helpful, and to distinguish between what's a feeling and what's a thought. I first like to just start with the feeling. There are thoughts there underneath it, but be like, I'm feeling anger. And then I'll kind of look at what thoughts I'm holding about the situation. I try to do that from a non-judgmental standpoint. I'm trying not to believe anything too deeply. Try to stay with my feet in the ground and just kind of be a witness to what's going on. And I invite Jesus in, probably invite Jesus in to begin. And I ask him for help, literally. I'll say, Jesus, will you help me look at this? Or will you help me look at this differently? And then I'll kind of be like, what is this really about? I'm just kind of trying to practice this inside myself right now and see what I do next. Something that Margot Krikkar talks about, she's, again, a Course in Miracles teacher from the Netherlands. She talks about there's usually a thought that is the root of the experience, and the thought is usually something about that I have failed, or I'm worthless, or I messed up. Some thought of self-blame or not enoughness. And I think that that's helpful too, because again, Gary talks a lot about this, how there's no one else out there. You know, there's one mind with, you know, billions of I don't even know. This is really new for me to like explain this out loud. And people might take issue with the way that I'm explaining it, but there's one mind. And so if I look at this and suspend anyone else, you know, there's no one else out there. What is the true content of my upset? And admittedly, I've done a lot of different therapy modalities and studied a lot of different like emotional process work, and so some of it is a little second nature to me, and it's new for me to know how to explain it. But when I start to begin that process, it kind of unfolds. I would say sometimes that anger turns to grief, and I'll sob, and I'll just imagine the Holy Spirit or Jesus or some symbol of comfort sitting there with me as I have this emotional release. I think it's really important to feel our feelings, and then a lot of we are really stuck in a lot of feelings that we've kind of repressed. I think it's also important to not get lost in them, but to let ourselves feel, for sure, is really important. And then, like I said, get to the root. What is the root content of it? There's a situation I'm thinking of, and I'm like, want to give an example? Yeah, it would take more time, but when I kind of get to what the root is, or what the root thought or belief is, at that point, I detect if there's any willingness in me to surrender it to Spirit, to Jesus, to God. He's, you know, Spirit is always there ready to heal that. A lot of these forgiveness processes talk about the first step being, removing our projection, like it's not about that person, it's about me. So what is it saying about me and my situation? Sorry, this is so convoluted. I kind of want to... Margot says, it would serve you well to keep in mind that whatever has been touched inside of you, whatever pain you're experiencing based on what's happened externally, it had that effect on you Whatever has been touched inside of you had to be a sore spot in your mind, a spot where love is not yet present. That sore spot pre-existed the event that seemed to be the source of your lack of peace. That event was just the trigger that brought the pain to awareness. This can be compared to, for example, having a bruise on your arm and you scrape against a wall ever so lightly with that arm. Then you feel the bruise, but the pain is caused by the bruise that was already there, not the wall. It is exactly the same with the bruises in your mind. They were already there, and the events that cause you lack of peace or pain uncovered a bruise, but they are not the cause of it. Exactly by exposing it and becoming aware of it, you are able to let it be healed. So, yeah. The pain is already in your mind, and it's just these dreams of experiences that bring it to the surface. And then she talks about, it's all about guilt. So we have these emotions that come to the surface, and then she says if you're able to find the thought or belief that you were unconsciously entertaining and uncover it, that is very helpful because you can then let it be corrected by the Holy Spirit. Sometimes you encounter multiple beliefs, multiple layers below one another. It's important to maintain an emotional connection to them. Again, I'm someone that historically has been very prone to trying to live life in my head, but it's important to feel where in your body, like I said, feel in your body where you're experiencing it. So once we figure out what the thought is and experience the feeling connected to it, we tap in. If we're able to find any willingness to hand it over to the Holy Spirit, Margot says, handing it over can be done in any form that feels right for you, by simply feeling the willingness inside yourself, by using an idea from the workbook, or by doing any kind of visualization. After handing it over, you do not have to do anything else. In fact, you really cannot do anything else. Wait and trust. The Holy Spirit guides your process, and He will do that very well. Perhaps you instantly feel something shift or change inside. Peace and calm may come about, or an insight may arise, or something else may happen. Perhaps at first it seems as if nothing is happening, but you notice a change later on. So, again, I invite you to really experiment with forgiveness. I really like Margot's description of the steps. It was a really good place for me to hone my skill. Gary Renard's chapter in Disappearance of the Universe is also really helpful. So again, that's the heart of as Ken says, that's the heart of the daily practice. Forgiveness is the heart of the daily practice. The simple phrase from the Course is also a simple phrase that's really helpful from the Course that is just very succinct, and that I sometimes also do instead of kind of going through this step-by-step process that I kind of described with Margot. I really like kind of simplifying things sometimes and just look at it. So the phrase from the Course that I like is, forgiveness is still and quietly does nothing. It merely looks and waits and judges not. I wonder if there's more to that. That's the main thing. Forgiveness is still and quietly does nothing. It merely looks and waits and judges not. There have been times when I have felt deep inner tumult. like visceral sorrow, like earth crushing sorrow and worthlessness and meaninglessness and darkness, almost like evil feeling inside myself. And was looking, I have felt this more than once, many times. I can talk about that at some point, but the most kind of shocking experience that I had with that is, I was trying to get like support from people and like talk to people, and that helped to an extent. But the moment that it was a long moment, but I sat with I was like, I just need to like sit and look at this. I don't know what else to do. Which is kind of the opposite of self-avoidance. I was like, I have to look at this dead in the eyes. And so I sat there and looked within and tried to look at the crux of this pain for as long as I could. I think I sat there just sitting on my bed looking inward at this pain, with the Holy Spirit by my side. I invited the Holy Spirit in and just sat there looking at it for, I want to say, an hour, maybe longer. And then, this is not always the case, but this was a very profound moment where after about an hour, there was this switch. It was like it dissipated. It erased. It came, not to say that it doesn't come back. It came back eventually, a similar one experience, but in that moment, I literally used that phrase, "Forgiveness is still and quietly does nothing and merely looks and waits and judges not," to navigate this really, really intense inner experience. I don't do that all the time. I numb out a lot. I will say that, that was a beautiful moment, and I felt deep, deep relief afterward. It's almost like this pain just turned to joy and freedom and just like exploded this tension and within me. But just a word on avoidance. That's probably my most difficult journey. Most difficult trait is that I avoid pain, as we all do, but and I think a really big way that I avoid it is through internet, tech use. And I just want to briefly mention that because it's something that I think we all really struggle with. And, I know there are always, since time immemorial, there's been ways to avoid ourselves, and we will always find those ways. But I think tech use and having a smartphone make it really, really, really easy. Having the internet makes it really easy. I'll say another way that I have nurtured my spiritual life is to take tech Sabbaths, as my friend calls them. Stop using tech for a day, if you can, a weekend. If you want to, really do it up, a whole week. There's someone I know in my life who has given up screens completely, which I think is really probably not realistic for a lot of people, but really just as a thought experiment, kind of exciting. And I, in particular, I really struggle with tech use, and so, or I'm particularly sensitive to how bad I feel from it. But that's like one of the ways that historically I've really avoided myself and avoided my feelings. So I'll just say that I invested in a non-smartphone. I have it right here. It's called a light phone, and it uses an e-ink screen. And I really adore it. It does not have apps like Instagram and Facebook, and you can't scroll endlessly, but it does have the basics. It has a directions app, a notes app, a timer. You can even have hotspot on it. You can text and group text. It does have podcasts. That's like one of the internet things that it has. It does have a very rudimentary directions GPS app, but it's yeah, it's not for everybody, but I love it, and I will not go back, unless something strange happens. But it's been a really good way for me to maintain connection to really encourage connection to myself, and not numb out on the internet. And my connection to self equals a stronger connection to spirit. So those are some meandering ways that I really tried to connect to spirit and get guidance. I really invite people to read Gary Renard's Disappearance of the Universe chapter about original prayer, and how prayer is not the words that we say, but it is the experience of being with God. And there are side benefits of guidance that come from that, but the true gift is the experience of being one with Spirit. True prayer, original prayer. Gary talks about spending 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the evening. Implementing what he calls original prayer. And he has a guided meditation on one of his CDs. But really just spending 5 minutes, doing your best to release your thinking and to put the Holy Spirit in charge of your day. That's been another big teaching of mine lately, or learning of mine lately, is to kind of ask myself at a random moment in the day, like, who's in charge right now? Who am I putting in charge? Am I trying to be in charge? And it's, Gary says, don't be heavy about it, but just invite the Holy Spirit in, and ask him. That's the gender pronoun that I'll use, but ask him to be in charge. And the biggest shift that I notice when I let the Holy Spirit be in charge is reminding myself to be gentle with myself and kind to myself. I'm really, really, historically, really, really hard on myself. And Spirit always is reminding me to be really gentle and to give myself as much grace as I try to give other people. That's the biggest shift. I think going forward, I want to make videos about going over the steps of forgiveness, maybe in a more succinct way and more prepared way, and maybe talk about kind of more about darkness, which I've mentioned. I've struggled with a lot. I've struggled with a lot of anger and a lot of darkness. But with that, I hope something in there was helpful. I know these are long videos, and I just kind of let myself go because I am resistant to structuring things more succinctly, and it's hard for me to get my flow going. Or it's easier for me to get my flow going when I let myself meander instead of having these talking points. So maybe that'll shift, but I just wanted to post something, and I really recommend reading Margot Krickar. She has a book, Awakening in Love, and a second one called The Great Liberation.